We still have people filtering in, but we are just going to give you a 2-minute warning. We're going to go ahead and start in about 2 minutes, so please have a seat. We're going to go ahead and get started. Please welcome to the stage Policy Fellow for LULAC, Jahadi Garcia.
Hello, and thank you for being here today. For Latinos, climate change has been a consistent challenge. However, we have an opportunity today to hear about what the environmentalists are doing. Please welcome to the stage Jeffrey Prieto from the Council, or General Counsel from the Environmental Protection Agency for opening remarks.
So thank you, everybody, for being here. And I just want to also thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm really humbled. I'm humbled to be speaking in front of you, but also humbled because of this particular topic that we're talking about. And it's something that the Environmental Protection Agency is absolutely focused on, but it's also something that's of critical importance. So I'm not going to get incredibly technical because of the amount of time, but we're going to have an opportunity to ask questions. But I want you to know that we are facing unprecedented times. We are facing a crisis that, quite frankly, humanity has never faced before. But with this also comes incredible opportunities. And as I look out in the audience, you will be part of this particular solution. We have an opportunity to make a difference. We have an opportunity to confront, which is an existential threat to our existence. And to tackle this is going to require all of us working together. Not just the federal government, not just states, not just communities, not just ENGOs, not just the private sector. It requires all of us, because that is the extent of the problem. And part of this is that the problem not only affects this generation, but it is generational. Because as you look at the effects of pollution, if you look at the effects of changes to climate, the greatest effects are on underserved communities. It's on communities that don't have necessarily the resources to respond. It also disproportionately affects children. And the effects on children are generational. They not only affect a particular lifetime, but they extend generation to generation. That is why there is a need for all of us to come together. There's a need for all of us to recognize that this is the opportunity to make a difference. So I am the General Counsel of the Environmental Protection Agency, and Administrator Michael Regan is the head of the agency. He is the first African-American man to lead the agency. I'm the first Latino to serve as the General Counsel. I say that only to say that there is an understanding of the effects that we see, but there's also an understanding of the responsibility that we feel. We have a place at the table for a reason. You are here for a reason. And it's because we come together that we can have the conversation that we need to have. So, a little bit of background. Who am I? My grandparents came from Mexico, and they settled in a really small community in California, Santa Paula. You know, if you're familiar with that part of California, all of the communities are the capital of something. Santa Paula is the citrus capital of the world, right? It's next to the avocado capital of the world, which is down the road from the strawberry capital of the world. My grandfather worked in the Sun-Kissed packing house for over 50 years. Over 50 years he worked in that packing house. And I'm proud of my family. Our generation was the first to go to college. My family's not an educated family, but the VFW post in Santa Paula is named Mercer Prieto, for my uncles that served this country, for my uncles that died for this country. And I say that only to say that I understand my path. My path has brought me here, and I also understand the responsibility that I have, because my community fought so that I could be here, and I'm here for a reason. Let me just talk a little bit about climate change and environmental justice. Those are the issues that this panel is going to speak on. Those are the issues that we are confronting. Environmental justice is critical as we deal with these particular issues. And I want to end with the fact that the solution sits in this room. You are the solution. I am so proud of one of the panelists, Lisette Perez, who is one of the members of the inaugural Youth Council at EPA. And my principal, the administrator, wanted me to tell you how proud he is of her, that she is serving as a representative, as a voice as we make our decisions. I'm so proud of a second panelist, Andrea from the Department of Agriculture, that's in a space that traditionally has not been filled. The solution is in this room. You are the solution. You will be the people at the table making decisions and deciding how we move forward as a society. So with that, I just want to say thank you for being here. Our journeys have come together. I truly believe that our ancestors and our families are here with us as they listen to us talk about what we will do together to address one of the most important issues and challenges facing us as a planet and as a people. With that, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Now, please welcome to the stage the rest of our panelists. Ron Pierce, who is the director at the Department of Energy Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, is here today to discuss what the DOE is working on. Lisette Perez, who's a part of the Youth Advisory Council, also from the EPA. Andrea Delgado, Chief of Staff, Undersecretary for Natural Resources and Environment. And lastly, but certainly not least, moderating this fireside chat and also offering some remarks is Biden appointee Francisco Sánchez, Jr., Associate. Administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administrator, where he oversees the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience.
Buenas tardes. Thank you for having us and for being a part of this panel, embracing the uncomfortable and honest conversation about climate change, because we find ourselves having conversations exactly like that at the White House and at the national level about how we tackle this very serious issue. You know, according to a recent Pew survey, 56% of U.S. Latinos said in the past year they experienced an extreme weather event, and 81% of Latinos are prioritizing climate action as compared to 67% of non-Latinos. And that partially could be culturally, but also that is just the very harsh reality that Latinos bear a disproportionate amount of the burdens by California wildfires. We see one right now just in the neighboring state in New Mexico that continues to try to be contained. We are the folks that are facing the Florida's rising sea levels and New York's heat-related health issues. And in Texas, in my home state, Latinos adversely impacted by policies where heat-related health problems are a consequence of bad policy. But despite some significant investments and sustainable efforts, we have some work to do to be able to deploy every resource that we have available to tackle the climate issue. I am proud of President Biden's commitment to climate change. If you look at the White House's 10 priorities, 4 of those tie directly to the opportunity we have for incredible change. Equity, economic equity, racial equity, crisis, climate crisis, and disasters. A perfect time to come together across the federal family to deliver meaningful solutions. And to give you just a little bit of context about how serious the problem is, right now alone, SBA is on the ground in 30 different disasters across this country, across 25 states and more than 250 counties. 18 of those are presidentially declared disasters. 15 of those are SBA agency-declared disasters, in which we are on the ground in states like Texas and Florida and California, and even in Latino communities in the Midwest, for example, in Nebraska, to do this. And so it's something that is deeply important and a priority to me. The son of migrant farm workers, my family used to go from the Valley to Florida, Ohio, and Indiana, and loop back around, picking the kind of crops that Mr. Prieto was just talking about. But during the oil boom, my parents, when my sister was born, they decided that we ought to settle in Houston. So the only thing that we would have to pick is our own destinies. So I am here because my dad became a welder off oil and gas. And so I want that opportunity to be there for the next generation, but it's not going to be in fossil. It is in clean energy, and it is those investments. And so we need to transition on how we prioritize those investments to ensure that Latino families in the future have the same opportunities that we have. And what an incredible place to be, where we can have Latino entrepreneurs at the start of that economy. You can't grow right now in petrochem if you're not a big company, but how create this new economic environment. So we'll get started with the panel. So our panelists, as you heard, represent quite a diverse set of perspectives and challenges and opportunities in this space. So we'll start, we'll go from Andrea on towards Ron. Is there a specific issue that each of you work on that you feel our audience needs to know about that they may not know about?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Associate Administrator. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Very grateful to the League of United Latin American Citizens for inviting us to be here today. I've been in the DC area for about 17 years and have been very familiar with the work of LULAC throughout that entire time and the great advocacy that it does on behalf of Latino communities on critical issues, from education to the environment to healthcare to immigration, and I appreciate the leadership. It's very much needed. A little bit about me before I get into the work, about what I want you to know about, because it's important to root ourselves, as Mr. Prieto just shared, like just really inspiring remarks about where it is that he comes from. I too believe that it's hard to know where you're going and where you're at if you don't know your past. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank you, because part of the reason why I'm serving here with the Biden-Harris administration was because you encouraged me to take that leap as someone that was at that time at the United Farm Workers and questioning whether the Department of Agriculture was the right place for me. So that just critical to the importance of mentors. I am Andrea Delgado, and I have many identities. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Latina. I am an immigrant. I am Ecuadorian Colombian. I came to the United States when I was 10 years old. And like some of you here in this room, I also had to fight for the right to be here, as did my family. I've only been a US citizen, and I'm proud to finally have become a US citizen in 2017. So that's a little bit over 7 years now. I hail from the Ecuadorian Amazon, a very green and lush area where it's abundant natural resources, clean air, clean water, diverse wildlife. And although I moved several times throughout my lifetime, by the time I graduated from high school, I had gone to 12 different schools. And I cannot remember all of the names of the schools, nor all the street names of the places where I lived, but I can tell you that I remember every volcano I saw and climbed, every river I ever swam in, and every lake that I visited. I shared that with you because that's part of my origin story and my love for nature and for trees. For me, they played a very important role, not just in recreation, provided me with an opportunity to explore, familiarize myself with my surroundings, pick many fruits when I was little. I used to love climbing tangerine and grapefruit trees and the guava trees. And not only did they do that for me, but they also provided me with an opportunity to have shade when it was really hot. It was hot most of the time, but it's the importance of the life-saving qualities that trees have. They help the air be cleaner, they provide a habitat for wildlife, and they also provide opportunities for recreation, and they're also really good for mental health. That's a long way of telling you what brings me here today. As Chief of Staff for Natural Resources and the Environment, I get the honor to oversee the U.S. Forest Service. How many people are familiar with the Forest Service? Okay, good. Well, hopefully by the end of today, everyone will know, and will know that we have more than 100 beautiful forests that you can visit across the country. Part of the work that I'm doing as Chief of Staff for Natural Resources is ensuring that not only are we creating awareness and equitable access to our public lands for underserved communities and many folks like you, whether you're in rural communities or in urban areas, there's many communities that don't have any tree canopy. And what I'm really passionate about is ensuring that we're leveraging a historical infusion of funds to bring trees and green spaces to communities that lack it, so that they can have places to recreate in, so that they have a place to find shade and refuge from these extreme heats that we're experiencing. It is 105 in Las Vegas right now. I don't see a lot of tree canopy around here. But part of what we're doing is we're leveraging $1.5 billion of infrastructure law funding, of the Inflation Reduction Act in particular, and we're investing 100% of it in underserved communities. And those are part of the decisions that are made by people that are thinking about equity, that are thinking about advancing environmental justice, and that's why where you're at matters, how you're leveraging your position matters. There's gonna be, every single state in the country is receiving this money. It's nearly 400 projects across the country, including in key states where there's large Latino populations. We're talking about California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida, even in states that for folks that are outside of those states as well, every single state and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico will benefit. Hispanic serving institutions are among the recipients. And this is an amount of funding that has never been invested before and definitely not invested at that scale in Latino communities. So I will pause there. I have many other things to talk about what the Department of Agriculture is doing, but I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on how we're advancing environmental justice and ensuring that Latino tribes and other underserved communities are fully receiving direct funding, not pass-through funding, to be able to promote climate resilience and protect themselves from extreme heat.
Lisette?
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Well, my name is Lisette Perez. I am one of the advisory council members for the EPA. And a little bit of my story, I come from the great city of Chicago. Woo, yeah. And my story is not similar to hers at all. I grew up in a concrete jungle, right? And my parents, Mexican immigrants, coming to a new country, had a lot of concerns of what the inner city life can look like, a lot of gun violence. Chicago is notorious for that, and a lot of other safety concerns didn't allow me to really go outside to the parks, or we didn't ever go to national park or public lands or forests. So I didn't really have that growing up, but it's only now that I'm starting to slowly get involved and really participate in this work. And through my studies, I attended the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And as a first-generation college graduate, I really didn't know what I wanted to study. You know, you're 18. You don't really know what you want to do for the rest of your life. So I just jumped in and I studied natural resources. I knew I liked social justice and history, and I was able to find what I enjoyed within that major. I discovered environmental education and environmental justice, natural history, all these other things that I found that I loved. I can find that and be able to do that within the environmental work that I'm doing now. And because of that, I was very fortunate to participate in different internships that took me to some amazing places. For example, I worked with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife with their Marine Reserves program one summer. Another summer, I worked in Juneau, Alaska with the Forest Service as an interpretive ranger, similar to a park ranger, it's just in U.S. Forest Service terms. And most recently, I worked at the Natural History Museum in Chicago, the Field Museum, where I helped a lot with their environmental initiatives, including their environmental education programs, where we took kids to forest preserves, which I did not know existed in Chicago, because you just don't learn about these things, especially when your parents, are just trying to survive and raise you to just be living a great life, And I say that to say now I'm able to continue that passion into my work. I did recently get inaugurated to the first ever youth council launched by any federal organization, with the EPA specifically. And I'm able to really advocate for frontline communities and represent Latino communities and Chicago, and really be able to fight for those policies, work alongside the administrator and other young individuals to put together these policies that we want to implement and help combat climate change and environmental injustice. And back to your question, what I'm doing, I believe education is so important. It's very difficult to see and hear about, different communities not knowing what climate change is, yet they're the ones most affected by it. And I think by really fostering community through education and, just being able to provide that accessible education for everyone is very important. And I think being able to do that will really help combat the climate crisis. I'm also participating and working with 2 other youth-led organizations, one called 0 Hour and another called One Up Action International, global youth-led organizations, where I help with their grassroots effort in the fight of climate change, as well as putting together accessible climate education on social media platforms so everyone can have access to them. But I think education is a very important thing in helping combat this crisis, because not everyone is aware, yet a lot of people are facing this and they see it unfolding within their own backyard. I know, for example, my parents being from Mexico, they know that there's a lot going on. Rivers are drying up, there's no fish in our rivers, and avocado trees aren't growing avocados anymore. They know what it is, but they don't understand the depths of it because of the lack of resources and education. And sometimes those resources aren't, there is not a wide variety of languages that are translated for people to really understand what climate change is. So I think education is very important in this fight.
So, thank you. My name is Ron Pierce, but just to say initially, I will try and be profound because the comments from General Counsel Prieto to the Deputy Administrator and my 2 colleagues here, you've given me a difficult task following. You've already said some profound stuff. First, it's an honor to be here at LULAC, and then I'm inspired to see so many young people here in this room this afternoon because it is Friday in Vegas. You could be a lot other places, so you inspire me. As I said, my name is Ron Pierce, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. The acronym is OSDBU, the easiest acronym to say in the federal government, not. And my small role, but important role that I play at the Department of Energy around what you've heard from my previous colleagues speaking in climate change is making sure that small businesses, diverse population of small businesses, have a seat at the table to help in the work of environmental change and climate change and fighting that. The Deputy Administrator's office oversees the OSDBU, and we're given metrics to meet every year in bringing small businesses and making sure we're addressing small business needs at the agency and across the federal government. At the Department of Energy, most of our small business spend is done at our amazing national labs. Quick aside, if you ever get an opportunity to visit a national lab, take it and do it. It's amazing work that is done there. But my office makes sure that we are advocating for small businesses, again, to work with the agency, Department of Energy, to help us in our mission. Last year, we spent $12 billion with a B on small businesses supporting the Department of Energy. Latino-owned small businesses accounted for almost $1 billion of small business awards and contracts. But that is not enough. That is not enough. We are charged every day to go out and do more. We're working with stakeholders like Hispanics in Energy that we've done for the last 3 years, a kickoff summit to introduce and share across our federal agencies, the program offices within the Department of Energy, opportunities for Latino-owned small businesses to work with the Department of Energy in our fight against climate change. I'll end with this because I'd like this to be interactive. And I just lost my train of thought. It'll come to me. I'll go on to something else. I'll get it in. But it is important. Oh, it just came back to me. So I'm at DOE. You have EPA here. You have USDA, the Small Business Administration. This is a priority for this administration. This isn't something that just 3 of our agencies are doing. It's across the federal government. We have Justice 40 initiatives that say 40% of the money that we spend and the benefits goes to underserved communities, Black, brown, Asian communities. And it's important and it's a priority. So it's not just my office, it's across all of the program offices in the Department of Energy, across all of the agencies across the federal government, that this is a priority that we're addressing climate change and environmental action. And I'm proud to be part of the team.
Thank you. So you made an excellent point. So I do that I notice more and more as we speak on climate. So if you're under 30 or 30-ish, raise your hand. Right. This is an issue at any conference or any discussion of climate. This is a critical issue to our youth. It is, you see it as imperative to the future and to your opportunities. And so it's sticking with the theme of empowering the next generation. What approaches do you think we can take, either innovative, right, thinking outside the box, or that have worked in the past to inspire youth to be involved in climate action? If they want to be involved, you want to motivate them to be involved, what advice would you give?
I can start. I believe there are already great opportunities out there. I think, yeah, there's just so many that I've come across. I know it is a matter of getting people interested. I think by attending conferences like this, it's a start, because I think it really sparks that inspiration. Once you see somebody that looks like you or has similar experiences or background, that really ignites some sort of inspiration. I know that inspired me. When I attended school, it was in a very not diverse area in Missouri, and I attended the College of Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Food, and within the University of Missouri, and it was not diverse, and that can be challenging. But when I started to meet my professors of color, Latino women, Black men that were in there, it changed something in me. It just seeing them as mentors and then helping guide me really helped me, just motivated me to continue this work, because again, it can be very hard when you're one of the only ones, however that can look like. So I think by really connecting with individuals that inspire you and attending these events and listening to people can really help just spark that interest. And in order to get involved, there's a lot of opportunities. I know there's a lot of internships. For example, I did the U.S. Forest Service one. There's a variety of organizations that are really trying to create that pathway for Black, Indigenous, Latino youth to get involved with the Forest Service, with the National Park System. And I know recently the administration launched an American Climate Corps that helps bridge that gap for young individuals like ourselves to get involved with the green workforce development. And I think that's very important, but also there's just you can do so much in this day and age too. I think social media, I'm pretty sure a lot of us are on there, and the power of social media, I believe, can really help also bring youth to the table. I've been lucky enough to, in this council that I'm serving with, the young folks that I'm serving with, many of them are Gen Z climate influencers. We hear a lot about content creators and influencers, but there's a lot of individuals using these platforms to create a more sustainable and just environmental movement. Many have gone on to create their own nonprofits, and I think using that power of social media and seeing the young individuals of color specifically has really been impactful, I think, in getting youth involved and at the table. But I'm also very happy to speak with anyone or connect with anyone who's looking for resources on how to get involved. I know it can be a struggle when you're young trying to break into the workforce, But if anyone wants to talk to one-on-one, I can always help and talk more about resources and opportunities. Thank you.
Can I piggyback off of that just very briefly? Shame on me in the sense that my office has been doing engagement events over the last 3 years. And until someone brought it up to me at our annual event beginning of this month, I had not reached out to youth organizations and brought them along. And whenever, going forward, the rest of this year, whenever we're doing a small business engagement event, I should and I will have a youth track there to expose, to bring younger entrepreneurs, interested, unaware individuals into the room to sit at the table, like in the play Hamilton. Hopefully you've seen it or heard about it. You got to be in the room where it's happened. And as I do engagement with the small business community, there needs to be a track to bring young people along into that community. And that's what we're going to be doing going forward.
Well, I was recently told, much to my alarm, that I no longer fit the youth category by my staff. And I asked them, how so? What is the cutoff? They told me it was 36. I am 38. So I was a little bit disappointed. So I should really be asking you what it is that gets you to get motivated about climate change. Well, first, I'm going to make an assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason why you're here is because you care. You're either already engaged and concerned and you want to do something about it, or you're curious. You feel the impacts of climate change, be it heat stress, be it because you yourself don't have the privilege of working in a climate-controlled space. Like right now, we have air conditioning. Our construction workers, farm workers, folks that labor in warehouses, they don't have the pleasure of being able to work in climate-conditioned spaces, and for them, that's a matter of life and death. My perspective about how to engage youth, and I've also consulted people younger than me since I was kicked out of the group, that meeting folks where they're at is really important. And part of the work that we're doing is we're going to minority serving institutions to raise awareness about the work that the Department of Agriculture is doing. That includes Hispanic serving institutions. We're giving grants to Hispanic serving institutions so that they're doing the work of identifying where is it that we need to be planting these trees so that we're providing shade to communities. Where is it that we can solve both the issue of lack of shade and heat stress, but also food security by creating food forests? So trees that are fruit-bearing or nut-bearing, so we can also be providing some nourishment as part of that. To your point, Lisette, about social media, the youth have a lot to tell us about how they leverage social media, like how they consume information, how engaging or interacting that information can be. In government, you're not going to be surprised. A lot of the tools that we use to communicate about what we're doing are traditional tools. I'm sure you're not sitting around waiting for a press release in your inbox. You're probably looking at some of your social media networks and having someone else that's probably not a government official telling you what's going on and get you interested. You might be seeking different messengers, which is why we need you to be talking about these critical investments. And if you're interested in anything that I've shared, I have my card. I got one of those, the higher tech ones that you can just scan so that you have all of my information. And I'd love to continue to get your feedback about how we can be doing better. And if that's not enough, I'd invite you to consider public service and actually coming into the bureaucracies, into many of our agencies and departments, where you have an opportunity to share your opinion, to influence how we're going about the work, influence how we're communicating about it, and in front of what audiences we're getting in front of so that we're breaking through.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the call to public service, it's still a noble calling. Politics aside, and how things have sort of gotten a little off track on the political side, public service is still a noble profession. And what you see up here is part of the representation of the most diverse presidential administration in this nation's history, including young people. That's I'm 53. You're young. You're young.
Thank you.
But bad news. AARP starts sending you cards at age 50. Just
Okay.
so you know, I don't know how they did that. But as we're coming on time, a quick lightning round. And we'll start, Andrea, left to right. We talk about and we just know, underserved, underfunded communities bear the unproportional impacts of the impacts of climate. So sort of in a lightning round, either something that you're working on, gotten over the finish line already, or see in the future of something that we can do in your roles and in your focus areas to help reduce that vulnerability.
My turn? All right. Well, I'll shift from extreme heat to something that's climate change related, wildfire. Because as folks know, the Forest Service has the largest number of wildland firefighters in the country, in the world. And in fact, the rest of the globe relies on us to train them on how to fight forest fires. What we're doing to help reduce the risk of wildfire to communities across the West, the Biden-Harris administration has invested more than $450 million on what we're calling community wildfire defense grants. That's money that's going directly to state, private, and tribal lands, so not National Forest System lands, but outside of that, so that communities are able to afford taking the measures necessary to be creating defensible space around their homes. In some cases, trees are really good. In some cases, there's too many of them and they need to be removed from certain areas so that it's good for forest health and so that it's reducing the threat of the catastrophic wildfire. Part of that is we're also helping support the workforce that needs to be able to reduce that risk in wildfire. I'm very happy to say that just this past Tuesday, something that we got out the door was a massive rent refund for Forest Service employees who are struggling to find housing. Part of the fact that our national forests are so beautiful makes it really hard to afford places to live near these forests. And these are the people that we rely on to keep your communities healthy, to fight forest fires when they do occur. If they can't afford to live there, they're living in their cars or in tents or even in the forest themselves, and that's just shameful. So the Department of Agriculture just provided a 50% rent refund for folks that are living on Forest Service lands, and it's part of the caring for the people that care for the lands and everybody else so that they can continue to do their job, protect forest health, and protect your communities.
I think I want to emphasize what I said previously, that education is so important. Again, the communities that are most at risk do not have that climate education. So I'm very firm when I say that, and I really want to emphasize that education, I think, is very important. And I think the work that the EPA is doing, especially with the Youth Council, we're really fighting for those grants to go towards environmental education and underserved communities and fight plastic pollution and a variety of issues. And also allowing, building community around advocacy, getting people involved in community spaces is very important as well, because that's how you also further foster more education and get more people involved through these grassroots efforts. And I do also want to point out that trees are very important. I think that's something that I also want to be able to participate in further down the line. Being able to increase tree canopy, especially in inner cities. Urban heat island effect is real. That's when inner cities, more concrete, there's more heat and present there. So having trees present really helps reduce that heat mitigation and climate change mitigation. So trees are very important, and I think later on I would like to also try to implement that work somewhere down the line.
Very quickly, you heard Andrea said, reaching out to what we're doing now, we're doing much more outreach to HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, educating them, making them aware of the grants and monies and the experience that they can gain by being a mentor-protege within the Department of Energy and across the federal government. So that's an intentional outreach that we're doing to those communities to make them aware of the possibilities and the monies out there for them to use.
Great, thank you. As we wrap up, I will just talk a little bit about the work that we're doing and leave you with a challenge. From the Small Business Administration, what we're seeing over the past 3 years is 18 million new small business applications across the country, the greatest in any 3-year period, the greatest under any presidential administration, and it's being led by women, particularly, and women entrepreneurs of color. We have creating 15.4 million new jobs, and a 3.9% unemployment rate, under 4% for over 30 months, the lowest in LBJ. And part of that, what we're seeing, is the fastest creation of Latino-owned small businesses in more than a decade, 20% more than pre-COVID levels. And what we have seen from our commitment for the Biden-Harris administration for support Latino-owned businesses, it has doubled our lending to $3 billion, as SBA Administrator Isabella Guzman mentioned in the luncheon. By the way, the highest ranking Latina appointed elected official in the Biden-Harris administration. And an additional $1 billion in contracting to minority-owned businesses, and particularly $1 billion more than before to Latino-owned businesses because of the federal investments of every federal agency here in those. And so I say that because looking at the future and protecting our climate, but also this prosperity that we are creating, we need to protect that prosperity because this is where it's coming from and in this room. And so I will close by saying this is an incredible work and investment in tackling climate. But the single greatest impact that we can have in tackling climate is you picking up that challenge, continuing to be advocates, and quite frankly, hold us and the federal family under this administration and any administration to deliver what we owe you to have a global climate and a nation that can be prosperous. So thanks to LULAC for having us, and thanks to our panelists.
Folks, thanks so much. Can you please stay on your seats? We're going to go ahead and continue with our program. We're going to take one quick picture with the group.
Oh, great.
And then we're going to continue with our next panelist, okay? And if everybody else kindly just stay on your seats, we can go ahead and get going. All right, give him a big hand. Thanks so much. And then now I'm going to introduce our CEO, Juan Proaño, who is going to introduce the next group. Please, Jeffrey. Oh, one more. You guys are too famous. Thank you so much. Go ahead. And then I'm going to introduce Juan Proaño, our CEO, who is going to introduce our next panelist. Thank you, folks.
All right, how's everybody doing? We're almost done. Almost done. Then we're going to have a big party and we're going to celebrate. So quickly, let me introduce basically our next session. This session is going to focus on harnessing the power of sports for social impact, emphasizing the importance of play in children's health and development, particularly in underserved Latino communities, by creating safer spaces, by promoting enjoyable activities through collaboration with companies and community partners. I'm very excited for LULAC because we're now going to be partnering with the U.S. Soccer Foundation. It's something very unique to us. It's the first time that we're doing this. And I want to thank Ed Foster-Simeon for that opportunity. I don't know how many of you had a chance to go up to the expo, but we had a soccer clinic for the community throughout this week. And we're looking to build upon that partnership moving forward. So, we have a soccer game kind of coming up in 2026 called the World Cup. You guys gonna be watching? Yeah, all right. And it's gonna coming to the United States and it's coming to Texas, so we're gonna have a lot of folks out there. And so this is gonna be in anticipation of that big event. So a little bit about Ed. Ed is the president and CEO of the U.S. Soccer Foundation. He was named the president in May 2008, and he's championed soccer as a tool for youth development and social change for over 3 decades. Under his leadership, the foundation has become a nationally recognized leader in the sports-based youth development, particularly in underserved communities. The organization's efforts have earned several prestigious awards, including the 2010 Steve Patterson Award for Excellence in Sports, Philanthropy, and Social Innovation. We're also welcoming Amir Lowery. I got to tell you, I met Amir at the U.S. Soccer Foundation's congressional soccer match. He was actually out there on the pitch. He is in much better shape than I am. He is much better looking than I am. But he is such a kind person. And I'm happy that he was able to join us today. Amir serves as the executive director of the Open Goal Project. A native of Washington, D.C., Amir played for Wake Forest University before embarking on a nearly decade-long professional soccer career in MLS and the United States Soccer League. Upon returning to D.C. to coach, Amir recognized the urgent need for greater diversity in the youth soccer landscape. Determined to make a difference, he founded Open Goal Project to bring more inclusivity to sports in his hometown. I'm also happy to welcome Karen Ventura. Kara Ventura is a soccer market representative, advocates for safe and inclusive sports environments, driving positive change for youth in the U.S. and globally. Since joining Musco in 2015, she has led 3 development of the Musco mini pitch systems across the United States and Latin America, transforming underutilized spaces in vibrant areas of for children to play and develop skills. We also have Chris Quaresma, who's a recreational supervisor at the city of North Las Vegas. Chris, originally from Ecuador, is a recreation supervisor for the city of North Las Vegas, where he focuses on creating safe and affordable sports programs for Latino youth. His passion for soccer, developed during his upbringing and undergraduate studies, drives his dedication to serving the city's vibrant Latino community, which makes up 45% of the population. And finally, Isaac Calderon, professional soccer player and youth mentor. Isaac, a young footballer from North Las Vegas, embodies this year's National Convention's theme through his dedication to empowering young generations of Latinos. Starting his soccer journey at the age of 5, Isaac made the local sports history in 2012 and progressed into MLS academies, now playing for the UAB Blazers while mentoring young athletes and demonstrating the transformative power of sports. I'm now pleased to welcome our special guests.
All right, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this glorious and hot Friday afternoon. My name is Ed Foster-Simeon. I'm the president and CEO of the U.S. Soccer Foundation. We're here today to talk about an exciting topic, and one that is on many people's minds, as soccer is taking center stage here for the next couple of years. We had an exciting match between Ecuador and Jamaica here at Allegiant Stadium on Wednesday, and another Copa America match tonight featuring Brazil versus Paraguay, and again for the quarterfinals on July 6th. It's an exciting time for our game in the United States. But at the U.S. Soccer Foundation, what we are most excited about is how we can use this excitement to improve the lives of children and communities across this country. We're thrilled to team up this week with LULAC and hope that you all got a chance to play with our coach mentors on the mini pitch in the expo and to learn about some of our health promoting programs. LULAC is a natural partner for the foundation, as nearly 50% of our program participants are Hispanic or Latino. And we're thrilled to have some of our longtime partners working to ensure that youth, specifically those living in under-resourced communities, have opportunities to play and benefit from our game. Up here with me today are Amir, former professional player and executive director of Open Goal Project, Chris Quaresma, recreation supervisor, City of North Las Vegas, Isaac Calderon, professional soccer player and youth mentor, and Karen Ventura, soccer market representative from Musco Lighting. I want to start with you, Chris, just quickly. Back in April, when we first met, actually, we opened our 700th mini pitch. For those who don't know, a mini pitch is a small soccer court put in a neighborhood park or a playground or a schoolyard so that kids have easy access to a safe place to play. We did one here in North Las Vegas where Hall of Fame soccer player Tim Howard and the City of North Las Vegas came together to make it possible. You were integral in that project and there to celebrate the opening. Can you tell us a little bit about that area and the community and what's changed since the addition of the new mini pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. So in North Las Vegas, as mentioned previously, it is 45% demographics Latino. We are the largest minority majority in Nevada and one of the largest in the United States. So for us, what's important is to enhance our partnerships and programming to represent the city of the residents there, right? So the mini pitch itself was a great representation of that city. It was a big hit. Tim Howard was obviously out there, that increased the hit as well, but creating those healthy, safe locations for kids, parents to take their kids, for adults who also play on, is big. So for us, we want to promote that health and wellness in the community and engage them through soccer. We want to create those safe, accessible spaces where we could watch and be able to enjoy the beautiful game. So we have already started some programming, as you all know, here in Vegas. For those out don't come here often, it's hot. So we only had a small window to start building those programs before it got too hot, but we did host a number of skills, one-on-one classes. Then we have left it open for the public to come in and use, not only during the mornings, even day if they need it, but we even turn on those lights for the community to come in and play pickup soccer, and they play every single day out there. So come the fall, we definitely have a handful of programs that we're rolling out, starting from ages 2 all the way to adults.
Well, great. So it's an addition to the community. When you think about it, what insights can you share about, like, how do you work with the community and to create that space that ensures that children are getting the activity that they need and families have like a community resource and that they're able to leverage that?
Oh, of course. So it's important to engage our community leaders and residents from the start. So one thing we've incorporated in all our parks was a survey to be able to, and as easy as a QR code with more information, where they can regularly give us feedback, including in the location of the mini pitch. Is it there are certain extended hours that they would like to see? So we want to meet those needs in every way possible. They also have that opportunity to let us know what kind of programs they would like to see. We want to be able to offer every type of program for every age and every skill level. That regular feedback is important because we want to make this area enjoyable. And for the most part, that's definitely one initiative that our department has put out there. With that survey as well, we have seen a large response of more mini pitches being demanded throughout North Las Vegas, from all the way on the northern side all the way to the southern side. So I do believe we are definitely going to have more of these mini pitches out there.
Which is a really interesting, nice segue into my next question, which is the growing popularity nationwide of the game of soccer. And how have you seen that here in Las Vegas? You hinted at it just there, that the demand is high for these play spaces.
Yeah, so there's been a surge in participation and fandom. We've expanded our program already. We have plans to expand it a lot more, as mentioned, just get a little cooler. And we're leveraging the soccer popularity to promote healthier lifestyles among our youth and families. So that physical health aspect, that building of the community, that social interaction, mental health is an important part of that as well, right? So giving these players, these families, these kids opportunity to be able to find, once again, this safe, accessible place is very important. As I come from an immigrant family where soccer and family are the biggest things, right? So I was lucky enough to always have people around me and places to go. So we want to, in North Las Vegas, offer that same opportunity. On top of that, with the mental health side and the World Cup coming up, over in Craig Ranch Regional Park, we have an amphitheater where we're going to be hosting World Cup watch parties. We're going to incorporate a soccer festival before and after when the time comes, and we're looking at about 45-foot to 25-foot screen, massive, and it's going to be completely free to the community because we want to harness all this popularity and this fandom that's going on with soccer.
Yeah, you made an interesting point before we transition over to Karen about, you know, we're talking about soccer, and a lot of times I think it's mistaken as just simply about fun and games, but it's about improving health, it's about improving well-being, it's about building community and ways for people to interact. You know, as if you've been reading any of the articles about the impact on our youth over the past few years and their mental health issues and sense of loneliness and isolation and all these issues that are coming to a head. And so these programs are about more than just, you know, soccer as a sport. It's about creating an environment where children can thrive and families can thrive. So Karen, you and your colleagues at Musco Lighting have been longtime partners of the foundation in creating mini pitches, and I know you've been to dozens of communities across the country and even abroad. How do you all work with communities to show the value of these play spaces, both as physical safe spaces for children to play and families together, but also as tools to improve the community?
Thank you, Ed, LULAC leaders, and all of you attending here, and also those of you watching online. I was born in Guatemala, and I grew up in the US since age 9. I'm a proud Latina, Chapina, dreamer, and I'm really honored to be here with you today. It has been inspiring to attend all the sessions, and I really hope that all of you today are also inspired about the work that we're sharing with you today. And Ed, as you shared, we have been a long partner, over 25 years, partners of the U.S. Soccer Foundation, and we've installed over hundreds of mini pitches, or minis, as I like to call them, across the USA and other parts of the world. Each community is unique and has different needs, but what they all have in common is there is always one person or one organization in that community that knows their community well. They see the need for a safe playing space, and they take action on it. They want to make a difference, and we are there to help. It is important for us to listen to the community needs. They share their stories. That is our first step. We work with Parks and Recs, like Chris shared, school districts, nonprofit organizations, public and private organizations. And it is really interesting how it all plays out. But the majority of the time, they see the value as they watch other communities. It is by word of mouth. They see how other communities are benefiting from the mini pitches, and they see how they're being positively impacted by these playing spaces. We always share our strong values, our system approach, our warranty, the value of working with a company that has been around for close to 50 years and has an impeccable reputation. We create systems that bring value and a positive impact to each community, and the mini pitch system is that tool that brings people together. What I've seen time after time, every time I go to a community, is just very positive feedback from the community members, the leaders, and even the kids saying, I love this space, this is my playing space.
That's fantastic. Have you collected any data or anecdotes on how it's impacting community? Any feedback, like formal feedback?
Specific data, no. We should probably start doing that because we have so many right now. But we always hear the stories. We have communities where children were playing in parking lots or even out on the street, which is not safe, right? And now they have safe, accessible playing space. We've also partnered with school districts, and specifically I want to point out the Ottumwa School District in Iowa, which has a very diverse Latino population. I actually lived in Ottumwa as a kid, and when I started working with Musco, I was always like, we need to have a mini pitch in Ottumwa. They love soccer there. And they did. We installed the very first one. They loved it. And it's so interesting because right away, they saw the impact it was having. It was being used before school, during school, PE, during recess, after school by the community. And the superintendent, his name is Mike, he reached out to us and said, Karen, we need more mini pitches here. And since then, it's been 3 years that we've been working with the community of Ottumwa. And by the end of August, they will have a total of 9 mini pitches in their community. This is a small community of 25,000 people, and they have 9 mini pitches. So time after time, we hear the positive impact the mini pitches bring to communities. And it transforms unused spaces, gets kids moving. Chris talked about that and the importance of getting them moving and healthy. It builds confidence and it empowers them.
So last question is, it's more of a technical question, I guess, but lighting is a part of the mini pitch structure, right? So one of the things that we've heard from communities is not only does it extend the playing time in the winter hours later into the evening, but it improves safety in some neighborhoods where a space might have been underutilized and there was no lighting. And do you have any sense of feedback on the broader impact of the mini pitch in the community?
Yes, so as you stated, we are a lighting company that is at the core of what we do. So we design, manufacture, and install lighting systems. And we start anywhere from small soccer fields, little league fields, all the way to professional stadiums. With our LED technology, we're able to control spill light, which is exactly what you're talking about. We can control the glare as well, cutting off the light and reducing the pollution onto the night sky and into the neighborhoods. Our lighting enhances spaces, which allows players to see the ball even as it goes up in the air. Lighting also creates safer spaces at night, which is very important for all communities, but especially for communities that are struggling with crime and violence. So definitely it is very important to have the lighting aspect as well.
So I want to thank you, and I want to transition now. We talked about the facilities. I want to talk about what happens, the programs, the players, the people who use the facilities. So Amir, just coming to you, can you tell us a little bit about the Open Goal Project and why you started the program in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, of course. First, thank you, Ed, for everything you do with the foundation. Thanks, shout out to Paolo for all you guys do and helping create this platform and space to explore these issues, and also Juan and everybody at LULAC. It's just been an amazing event. So I started Open Goal Project almost 10 years ago. And my history and story and the passion that I bring to what I do is really a product of my history with soccer. I grew up playing in DC, and that's where I currently run my organization. I played at Wake Forest, I played professionally, and when I was transitioning away from soccer, I started coaching. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but I really enjoyed it. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with, being around the game from a different perspective. And when I was coaching for a travel club in DC, one of the first clubs I grew up playing with, the lack of diversity, the lack of racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity really struck me, and it was unacceptable for me to be, coaching in my hometown with a club that I grew up playing with, and to see an environment that wasn't really, giving the best, it wasn't creating the best learning environment for the kids. It wasn't necessarily equitable or providing opportunities for everybody in the city. So I immediately went out and to do something to change that. So that was the birth of Open Goal Project. We're dedicated to leveling the playing field and making sure that kids and families who don't have means to access pay-to-play soccer still can have the resources and ability to navigate that environment and make sure that their kids can play. So all of our programs are 100% free to play, and we make sure to close all the gaps that are there for, like I said, kids and families that otherwise wouldn't be able to access high-level soccer programs. So I'm super passionate about this work. I feel like it's purpose-driven for me. I'm super passionate about building my community using the game of soccer, and creating a positive impact and infusing positive energy into my community through the game. So those are the things that really drove me to build out the organization. This year we hope to serve about 500 kids. We have a high-level soccer club, summer camps which are going on right now. We do college ID camps. We have a range of programs that fill some of the equity gaps that you guys address at the foundation, and that we all are addressing here on this panel. So just we're doing a piece of the work, and we got a long way to go.
You raise a really important point around access and opportunity. Around the world, the game of soccer is the common person's game. Everybody plays. Everyone has access. But it's evolved here as a very much a pay-to-play kind of model, and it can cost thousands of dollars a season to participate. So as you think about what are some of the biggest challenges that you are facing in providing access to soccer for youth of color, and how do you overcome those obstacles? And I just want to add a point to this, because as I said, this is about more than fun and games. These kids are playing, but they're learning teamwork, leadership, perseverance, grit, all the things that when they go to work one day, that will be helpful to them. So this is not just about kicking a ball, but so tell me how the challenges you're facing.
Yeah, so, I think what you said is important to frame some of the conversation. In the Washington, D.C. area, just to register for a youth soccer club, it can cost between $2,000 and $3,000, sometimes more. And that's just to get your child in the door and on the team. And then from there, uniforms, travel, a lot of clubs, as a lot of clubs require more travel. You may be taking a flight at a higher level, or you need a hotel. So for us to create a free-to-play ecosystem and a free-to-play club, it's very challenging to do that within the pay-to-play soccer system. And pay-to-play, is the way of the U.S. soccer system. And it's unfortunate that the business elements and the profit motive has gotten out of control in a way that, these costs to play have just gone up and up and up. So for us to, work with families that are from marginalized communities, 99% of our kids are Black and Latino, to work with those families and to help them navigate that system where there is, travel, and there are resources needed in the form of time and transportation, and information. There's a lot of things and barriers that families have to navigate. So those are some key challenges that we face. And, we just try to do everything we can to make sure that we're meeting our kids and our families on their level. We make sure that, we're addressing them not with like a blanket strategy, but more on a one-to-one basis, and really getting to know them as people and understanding what they're going through in their lives that makes it hard for them to participate. So that's a key area that we address.
We talked a little bit about the coming atmosphere around soccer. With you have Copa America going on, you have the FIFA Club Championship next year, the World Cup, Men's World Cup in 26 coming. What are your plans? Do you have a goal that you're trying to achieve during this unique window of opportunity? Everybody's paying attention.
Yeah, I would say, when I thought about this panel and this question, the system is alive and well and working. And when I reference the system, I mean systemic racism, I think, has been a common thread between all of the panels and a lot of things that we've discussed here at this LULAC convention. So the work that's necessary to fight that, to push back against it, to make sure that we are driving some equitable outcomes in our communities and making sure that we're uplifting Black and brown people through sports. That work is ongoing, right? So between now and World Cup, the only thing I can hope to do is continue to grow and scale our program. We serve a couple hundred kids in the DC area, but the need for free-to-play soccer programs and holistic youth development programs is massive. So we do a small piece of it. I'd hope that we can continue to grow and scale our program, collaborate with like-minded individuals and organizations who have similar mindsets and goals to us, and then also help other people or empower other people who are interested in doing similar community work, empower them with the knowledge, the resources, the information to go out and do some of this work in their own communities. We'll be able to do a small piece of it in DC, but we need people like yourselves in this room who are community oriented, who want to see the world become a better place. We need people to step up to the plate and start your own youth organizations, start your own programs. So that would be my hope between now and then, to just continue spreading the gospel, as I say, making sure people know what the work is and the importance of it.
So this is great. So if the audience has been following, we started with the infrastructure, the parks departments, the field builders. We went to the organizations who provide the programming. And now we're coming to where all this comes together, which is in young people in the community. So Isaac, your journey in soccer began at a very young age. Can you share a little bit about your story and what has inspired you to start playing, and how those early experiences have shaped your career?
Yeah, of course. I started playing since I guess I could walk, as everyone would say, and my dad kind of carried me playing. And my career took off when I was, I want to say, 8, when I was invited to Spain to do trials at Espanyol, the Barcelona over there. It's a La Liga first division team. It was an awesome opportunity. I was there for a month, got to meet a lot of people. I was doing the tryouts with Russians, so it was very different for me to understand how to communicate with them speaking Russian and me trying to understand it and switching to Spanish. But eventually everything went well, and I came back to the United States and continued playing. And then once I got into high school, I moved to Minnesota, which has an MLS team called Minnesota United. And it was really well because I had gotten invited to the national team, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. But unfortunately, after that year, the club went bankrupt, and I had to find different teams to contact. And thankfully, I had done super well previous years. I had multiple contacts from different MLS teams, such as the Portland, Kansas City, Seattle, and Cincinnati had reached out to me because I had played them throughout the season with Minnesota, and So they got my information, they called my parents, and were willing to kind of get me on a scholarship over there. And I had spent the last 3 years of high school there. And it was really good. It's such a good experience. I was able to go up with the first team and kind of make my first debut. So I was very happy there. But unfortunately, stuff just didn't go right. And I'm in college, thankfully, as my parents would love for me to go to college. So glad to follow in the footsteps that they want me to.
That's not a bad thing.
100%, no, 100%. The opportunity is there.
That's a good thing.
I'm
So,
still alive.
yeah. As you think about your experience, was there a coach in particular or anybody that influenced you in terms of playing a role in your life outside of your family?
Not necessarily. Mostly my dad, as he, kind of introduced me to the game and taught me everything I knew.
Mm-hmm. And so are you working with any youth now, or are you doing any work?
Not in particularly with the group, more of on my own. And I kind of have, when I was in Cincinnati, I lived with the host family. And I had like a host brother, and I'd train him and help him and everything that he needed. And it was a good experience for me because I was able to realize the youth coming up, as I'm still young, but the younger kids, to see how they view things and trying to help them out to become the best player they can.
So your cultural background, what impact did it have? You talked about going to Europe and being in different cultures. What advice do you have for young people who are playing or want to play, and how to think about the game and how the different experiences that you might encounter?
Honestly, just to kind of enjoy the moment, take it in, and just go with the flow, as I'd say. Just because I've met multiple people from all over the world. I currently have teammates from Spain, Brazil, Germany, and to kind of bring all the coaches together is like a special thing, because then you don't only just focus on yourself, you're focusing on what others do in different parts of the world. And it's a very good experience for me.
Yeah, I often say that there are 3 universal languages: math, music, and soccer. No matter where you go, you can communicate with people through those 3 mediums. So thank you very much. I want to wrap up this panel with kind of a question that I'm going to answer first. One is, what keeps me up at night, right? What keeps Ed up at night? At the U.S. Soccer Foundation, we're really trying to transform the landscape, address the problems that Amir spoke to about access and opportunity and bringing the game to where kids are. What keeps me up most at night is missing the opportunity that we have right now to leverage this moment that soccer is having in the United States to do good, right? There's going to be a big party. The World Cup is going to be fantastic. I have no doubt about that. But if we fail to leverage the energy and the dollars and the resources that are going to be produced as a result of those to improve the lives of the young people that we're talking about, strengthen the communities that need help the most, then I fear that we will have really squandered a once-in-a-generation kind of opportunity. And so that's what keeps me up, because as you shared, Amir, that this can be a powerful force in a young life, right? It's less than 1% of kids will become professional, paid athletes, right? Because it's really hard, right? There's not that many jobs, and it's very difficult. But all these other benefits are so important in life. And so that's what keeps me up, is not failing to take advantage of this moment. What keeps you up at night? What is the thing that's on your mind the most as you think about these next few years?
I would say, I'll jump in. I think, the need, like I said, for our program has grown significantly year over year. For example, we have 150 kids that we accepted into our summer camp. And this year was the first year we had a wait list. We had 50 kids on our wait list because we have one field. We have we don't have unlimited staff and hours and time on said field, and you know, we couldn't accept everybody into the program, right? So I think for me, it's the urgency of building and scaling programs like ours and creating more spaces and, you know, really making sure that, you know, we're providing the adequate resources and opportunities for players and families to access the game. I think that's central to everything. And I think, you know, this is a long-term strategy and approach we all have to take. We have to be patient, but, you know, that thing that keeps us up is at night is that urgency, right? And you know, the passion that we have, and, you know, we have to do the best we can to provoke and affect change as much as possible. So that's what keeps me up at night.
Chris, what would you want people to take away from here? What keeps you up, or what is it that you think this audience, you want them to leave here?
Yeah, I truly believe that, like you mentioned, harnessing the times that we're in. I don't know if we're going to get another shot here in the United States to have so many of these soccer tournaments and big events. So just in the community of Las Vegas, it's being able to provide those safe spaces and partnerships like we have had here to create those, not just 1, 2 mini pitches, but I'm talking about maybe we'll surpass that 9 in the other places you have been looking at, but really put those in the locations, especially in the communities that truly need them, because a lot of those members of the community might not have the resource to get in a car and go 30 minutes away. So I think what keeps me up at night is urgency as well. It's, can we not only create the spaces for these kids and even adults all the way up to help them physically, to help them mentally, and then in the Parks and Rec world that I live in is providing those programs as well. We do have on just regular soccer field, we have a recreation program that hits about 800. We've tried to found a way to work with our clubs to see if we can create a transitional league. And with these mini pitches, that's going to offer even more, because you can host a variety of different types of those skill developments and ages. And when I said 2 years old, I wasn't even joking about that. Having places for people as young as 2, because the nice thing about those mini pitches, it's futsal, but now you have like an aluminum perimeter. So those kids can't go too far. So eventually they're going to learn how to stay within those lines and then all the way up.
Yeah. Isaac, I'm going to come to you. What do you, a lot of these people around your age are in this audience, like what would you want them to leave thinking about, and what's on your mind and what keeps you up at night about all this?
To, you know, hopefully one day be able to make it to the World Cup as 2030, hopefully, God forbids, such as, so being able to see this, you know, upcoming, like the Copa America, like I'm going to tonight's the game, so to experience that is amazing. Kind of hopefully one day be out there, have support. Super.
Karen, what, you know, you have a lot of work to do, right? And tell me what's keeping you up, and what do you want this audience to leave thinking about?
What keeps me up at night? Well, what keeps me up at night, Ed, is seeing how much our kids are struggling with mental health issues. There's a mental health crisis starting from anxiety, depression, and even suicide for some. I'm a mom of 2 teens, and I can see the impact that screen time has on our kids. Over 90% of teens are on the screen for extended periods of time. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against technology, it's great, right? But as a mother who has encouraged and been able to give my kids the opportunity to play sports, I see the positive impact that it's had on their mental health. And every child deserves that. Every child deserves that opportunity, but especially every Latino child deserves that. To play outside in a safe space, to play sports. Playing sports outside keeps them active, keeps them healthy, builds strong confidence, it empowers them. It is something that carries on to their adulthood, and these kids are our future generation, right? That's part of this conference, right? The future generation. In Spanish, we say, tenemos una gran responsabilidad, which means we have a great responsibility. We have a big responsibility. And we all need to work together, united, each one of us here that are in the room, and for those people that are watching as well. We have a responsibility, una gran responsabilidad, to provide safe playing spaces for kids. And sometimes we get caught up, I think, with the numbers or thinking, I can't make a difference, like I can't do this on my own. But I think it's important to unite with organizations like the U.S. Soccer Foundation and the Gold Project as well, your local organizations, even just being here, right, with LULAC, and work together to make a difference, to create these spaces for kids, because they need to stay active. They need to just go outside, right? Life for kids that played 10 years ago outside looks very different from today, right? So that's really important. I think if we work together, we can see a major shift in the mental health crisis that we're facing today.
Well, and that powerful ending and passionate as a mom and what this means to young people firsthand. Thank you all for your insights and contributions to this conversation. Together, we can harness the power of soccer to create lasting positive change in our communities. And thank you for being here, and I look forward to continuing this important conversation. Thank you very much. Hey, thanks.
starting at 4. Good evening, everyone. We have one more session tonight. It starts at 4 p.m., so please do not stray too very far. This one's going to be called Latinos and the Future of Voting and Civil Rights, and it will be our last plenary for the day.
If everybody could take their seats, we're going to get started shortly.
Mic check. Testing 1, 2, 3. If we could have everybody start taking their seat, please. If everybody could start taking their seat. And if our staff can help get some of the people that are outside to start coming in. I know there's been a lot of people kind of walking around. And George, you're welcome to stay. Carlos, you're welcome to stay. Right? Okay. I know. Get them inside. All right, if we can leave the doors open to allow our delegates and members to come in and guests. Dejen la puerta abierta, por favor. Does anybody need, oh, you got water over there, good. Got your own cheerleader section there. All right, it's 4 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started and open up our panel regarding Latinos and the future of voting and civil rights. As you know, LULAC was founded in 1929, basically as a civil rights organization, and we have been fighting ever since, whether it's ending segregation in restaurants, ending segregation in schools, was the Mendez versus Westminster case, ending segregation on not allowing Latinos to serve on juries, Hernandez versus Texas, that allowed Latinos to serve in juries throughout the country, or fighting civil rights battles. Every 10 years, we wind up suing many states on voting rights cases and turning gerrymandering and redistricting. In fact, we just won a big victory in Washington State in Franklin County, where LULAC sued Franklin County, and we were able to get single-member districts, and we hope to elect the first Latino or Latina as a county commissioner in Franklin County in Washington State. We will also sued Iowa make sure all our ballots were bilingual. Can you believe that, todavía, in this future? And of course, we always do Texas, Arizona, and other states on making sure that we have single-member districts and representation across the board. So voting rights and civil rights are really el corazón de LULAC. That is what really drives many of our members who have suffered through all types of injustices in the past, and whether it's trying to pass an immigration reform bill. For those of you who saw the presidential debate last night, how immigrants are being treated and described and used in the political process, as well as what happens to people in the border and in other areas. And then what's happening in education in terms of what opportunities are provided in terms of, I had to file a bill that said if you graduated the top 10% of your class at any high school, you would be admitted to any public university in Texas, because they did away with affirmative action in Bakke because of the decision that kind of did away with that. And so with us today, we have a panel of some really great qualified leaders and experts in this area. And what I'd like to do is start with some of these panelists and start introducing them to you. Our first one, I don't know how many of you know that MALDEF, once upon a time, was a part of LULAC. And LULAC founded it, and then it spun off, and now MALDEF has become the premier litigation for Latinos and civil rights leaders. Their current leader is here with us. He is based in Los Angeles. Let's give a big hand to Thomas Saenz, the MALDEF.
Thank you, Domingo, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. I just want to touch on 3 critical issues in civil rights and voting rights for the Latino community. And the first is what we all know, which is the critical importance of what's happening in November. This is a time when the Latino community is being called upon once more to save the United States from its worst instincts. We've seen it time after time, election after election, where there's a trend that the pundits on media say is going to sweep the nation, and then they run into states with high Latino voting populations, and it changes. And we end up changing the narrative of an election. As often as not, it's been elections here in Nevada that have been the switch in what was going on across the country. This year, as you have no doubt heard from everyone, is more important than any prior year. This year, the Latino community, through voting, is being called upon to save democracy. That's not an exaggeration. And I have to say, as a lawyer, and now for 15 years the leader of MALDEF, a legal organization, what is at risk is the rule of law. We risk becoming a nation where law does not determine outcomes. Instead, it's the whims. Instead, it's the prejudices of leaders who have empowered themselves, whether that's in the White House or on the Supreme Court, beyond what should be permissible in a democracy. So the first issue I want to drive home, I know you've heard it, you'll hear it more, is the importance of what happens in November this year to democracy and the rule of law. And it is incredibly important that Latinos play our usual role, an even more important one since we are now the second largest racial voting group in the country. Now the second largest racial voting group in the country. It's all the more important that we play our traditional role of showing up in numbers that they don't expect, in turning out and participating in ways they don't expect, and changing the potentially dangerous outcome that some of our compatriots would like to see occur in November. The second issue relates directly to voting rights. As Domingo explained, voting rights are really foundational to all civil rights. When we have the right to vote, to select who represents us, to ensure that that representation is channeling our interests and championing our interests, voting rights are preservative of all of the other rights that we depend upon in this country. It's important to understand that voting rights are under threat. Most specifically, recently this year, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is one of the circuits, regions below the US Supreme Court, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals concluded that there is no private right of action to enforce Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So what Domingo described, the litigation that has resulted in switching systems from at-large to districted elections that give our community an opportunity to elect candidates of choice, challenging redistricting, as often as not in Texas, and ensuring that there's representation that reflects the growing Latino population. All of those cases are brought by private parties under Section 2. When LULAC sues, it's as a private party enforcing the Voting Rights Act. What the 11th Circuit decided is that there is no such right, that only the federal government may enforce Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That is a threat to every person in this room, every person outside of this room, every person in this country. But I want to accentuate that for the Latino community, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which has now been on the books for almost 60 years, has really only protected our community for 49 years. That's because initially in 1965, the Voting Rights Act did not include the Latino community. It was created for the African American community that was continuing to face Jim Crow practices in voting and elections throughout the South and other problems in relation to voting discrimination outside of the South. But it did not include the Latino community except for a small portion of the community, those educated on the island of Puerto Rico, regardless of where they lived as adults. It took effort 10 years later in 1975 with the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act to expand it to include protections for us in the Latino community. It's important to note that that opposition included civil rights organizations, some of which were afraid to reopen the Voting Rights Act to add Latinos out of a fear that it would be diluted and weakened. It was not. We fought that victory and have had the protections of the Voting Rights Act for 49 years. They're now trying to take it away from us by saying there is no private right of action. We all have to be involved in ensuring that organizations like LULAC, like MALDEF, and the clients that it represents have the opportunity to enforce Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Even today in the 11th Circuit, MALDEF has 2 cases challenging limits on the number of people you can assist to vote. In Arkansas, where there's a limit of 6 each election, you can't help more than 6 people. You help a 7th person, you've violated the law. That violates the Voting Rights Act. In Missouri, a case we just started, there's a limit of 1. You can only help 1 person in an election to cast a ballot. The minute you help a 2nd person, you have violated the law in Missouri. Also, clearly a violation of the Voting Rights Act. Those 2 cases are on hold because of that decision that there is no private right of action for Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The last issue that I want to mention very quickly is we are 1 year from a U.S. Supreme Court decision in SFFA versus Harvard University and the University of North Carolina that changed 45 years of precedent to prevent universities from considering race in a systematic way in making admissions decisions to selective universities. Now, we've been distracted as a community with all of these other issues in the intervening year, but we have to focus on making sure that that overturning of 45 years of precedent does not result in shutting university doors at the flagship universities across the country to our community. We have to ensure that the existing legal tools, which are powerful, even in the aftermath of those Harvard and UNC decisions, powerful tools to make sure that we can institute greater equality of opportunity when it comes to higher education admissions. I'll end there. I look forward to further discussion.
Okay. Our next speaker is Alphonso David. He's been here with us as a supporter. He's the president and CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum. They're actually going to be here having your conference, a week from now?
Yes.
Dealing with some of the issues regarding civil rights. And let's give a big hand to Alphonso David.
Hello, everyone. So as you heard, I run the Global Black Economic Forum, which is focused on economic opportunity for marginalized communities. So what does that mean? We're looking to break down all of the silos that exist and all of the obstacles that exist to creating economic opportunity for Black and brown people, for marginalized communities, and many exist, unfortunately. We also currently represent the Fearless Fund. This is an organization that was created 5 years ago by 2 Black women to help other people of color who are having challenges getting funding to support their businesses. So they created this company. They've been helping people of color for 5 years, and were recently sued. And the argument is that by providing grants to Black women or people of color, they violate federal law. And the same 11th Circuit that Tom mentioned that issued the voting rights decision, a 3-judge panel, 2 of the 3 judges issued a ruling about 2.5 weeks ago where they held that the Fearless Fund cannot provide grants to people of color, specifically in this case, to Black women. There was a preliminary injunction that was filed, and the case has not been decided on the merits. But as it relates to the preliminary injunction, the court concluded that the plaintiffs in that case showed a substantial likelihood of succeeding on the merits. Now, that case should be concerning to anyone in this room. Why is that? Because all of you are sitting here and you may think about opening up your own businesses at some point. And if you open up your business, or if you open up a not-for-profit, and you decide to provide services to a specific demographic group, let's just say Latinos, someone could argue that by providing services only to Latinos, it violates the law. That's the principle that we're fighting for. Now, there are different statutes and regulations that you can cite, but that's the principle that they're trying to enforce. To say that you cannot engage in self-help, to say that in a free enterprise, you cannot try to mobilize and help your community. Now, there are 2 things that I think that are important that I want to highlight. There are many issues that we have to address, but I think 2 as it relates to this topic. One is, please don't forget the power of your vote. All of you in this room know someone, or you are of age to vote. And understanding the power of that vote, because people who are interested in taking away your power are interested in making you believe that your vote has no power. So you need to understand that your vote has power. And I worked in the Attorney General's office for 3 years in New York, where we litigated cases. And I'll tell you 2 cases of interest. One, where Latino employees who were also immigrants were working at a gas station, and they were speaking to each other in Spanish. And they were told they were prohibited from speaking to each other in Spanish. We had to sue the company to basically say you're violating New York law. And those employees need to understand the value of their vote because they could vote. Second, we represented hundreds of immigrants who came to this country. I'm an immigrant. I'm from Liberia, West Africa. And my parents came here and they sought asylum. And we represented individuals who were seeking asylum here in the US. And they had companies that purported to provide them with immigration services, but they didn't have the qualifications to provide those services. So they took hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars from immigrants that were looking for green cards. And we were able to sue those companies and shut them down and get $23 million back to immigrants who are paid for those services. Now, I'll tell you those 2 stories because the narrative that you will hear is that immigrants have no power, marginalized communities have no power, Black people have no power, Latinos have no power. It is important for us to understand and harness our political power. The second point that I think is important is we can't operate in our silos. I can't, as a Black person, say immigration is not important to me because it doesn't affect my community in the same way. We have to understand that the opposition is looking to target you and target me and target him and target her, but make us believe that the issues you care about are different than the issues I care about. And we care about all the same issues. We care about equity. We care about equality. We care about fairness. So if she's being treated unfairly because she's a Latina, I should care about that even though I'm not. And so understanding the importance of your vote and the importance of collaboration and seeing beyond yourself. Because if we're able to do that, we will be able to win. Not only this election, but we will create a sustainable pathway for the future.
All right, thank you.
Domingo, I have to make one correction. And it's a testament to the importance of the Fearless Fund case, but I misspoke. The voting rights decision is from the 8th Circuit. I had Fearless Fund on my mind, which is the 11th Circuit. Again, a testament to the importance of that case to all of us, but I apologize for that. 8th, 11th, they're both in the South.
All right, with that correction.
Neither as bad as the
You can
Fifth
tell you got
Circuit.
a panel
Neither as
full
bad
of
as the
lawyers.
Fifth Circuit.
All right, our next speaker has been a strong immigrant rights activist. She is from Miami. She is the president and CEO of the DREAM US. She has been involved as the first undocumented person to testify before Congress and the Senate regarding the DREAM Act. And she is here with us to talk about her perspective. Big hand, Gaby Pacheco.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. It's been a great conference, and this is the last panel, and I'm really excited that you all are here. And I'm also really excited to see the youth still here. So thank you for sticking around. And there's two things I want to talk about with it regards to civil rights. The first is education. And this year, Brown v. Board of Education is celebrating its 70th year. And the NAACP and the Thurgood Marshall Legal Defense Fund has had a celebration called We Are All Brown. And I think it's really important that we realize that 70 years, there's many of our grandparents that are still around, that 70 years wasn't that long ago. And that even though we have had cases after cases, Plyler v. Doe, Mendez Westminster, that we are still fighting for educational rights, that this is still happening. And the DREAM.US supports dreamers, undocumented students, first-generation immigrant youth who go through our school system, K through 12, but are confronted with this harsh reality that when they want to go to college, the barriers are there not just from the money, but there are people who live in states like Georgia who are banned from being able to go to the 5 state schools because they're undocumented. And it doesn't matter that they want to pay as international students, which 25 states have no laws that provide in-state tuition for these students, even though they've gone to their schools, they've graduated from their high schools, right? But there's also Alabama that has a similar ban, and South Carolina. It is 2024, folks. And in the United States of America, there are still individuals who, because of who they are not allowed to get an education. Segregation is happening. And we really have to come to the realization that all of these things, as Alphonso was saying, as Tom was saying, are all interconnected. That what we saw with the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action, that what we're seeing on immigration and reproductive rights and you name it, they're all interconnected, and they all want to keep our community subjugated to them. They want to keep us as an underclass, and they're afraid of our growing power. They're afraid of our melatonin. They're afraid of our different languages, the beauty that we come and we bring, the culture. And this is nothing new. I was telling a friend who was feeling really upset about the debate and what we were going through and was like, I'm so mad with the performance last night. And I said, listen, this is America. And we have to, if there was aliens out there watching, they're probably saying, oh, they're in their racist era. Nothing new. Right? So we really have to start understanding that we have to come together. The first panel that started this conference was a unity breakfast. And this conference has been about bringing generations together, realizing that we, the younger folks, stand on the shoulders of giants who have been fighting for us, and that, I'm kind of in the middle, but the younger generation are doing such, and I just thank you for taking notes. I just feel so inspired that you're all just taking this in, but we really have to figure out how to get it out. And I hope that what you're listening here fires you up and compels you to act and to speak on these issues. And I want to tell you something. For 20 years, being an advocate, I was not able to vote because I was not a citizen, but that did not stop me from using my voice. And I'm not here to toot my horn, right? But as an undocumented Latina, not only was I the first to testify in Congress, but I was being asked all the time to introduce candidates. And I've introduced Obama, and I've introduced McCain, and I've gone out in the community, and people have sought out my voice, even though I was not able to vote. And I mobilized other people and encouraged other people to do things because I have power, and every single one of you have power. The second thing I want to talk about that is as equally important as everything we're saying up here is about Latinas. Latinas get paid 55 cents to the dollar of a white man. We are the lowest paying class individuals in this country. 2 weeks ago, there was a report that showed that less than 1% of Latinas are in C-suites. President and CEO, Latinas, in corporate America, in our businesses and our organizations, they're non-existent. Why? So we really have to, and I am so grateful to LULAC. There is this, maybe back in the day that might have been the thing, but reality is that LULAC in the 1930s, they had Latinas at the forefront, that there has been at MALDEF, Latinas leading as president. Tom is very proud, I'm actually on the board of MALDEF, that majority of the leadership of MALDEF they're Latinas. So we're doing our job, right? And I want to applaud us for that. But I want to make sure that the men in the room and the Latinas in the room, we come together to ensure that Latinas have our place in this country, that we are recognized for our worth, that we're recognized for what we bring to the table, and that we are given our own place.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Max Sevilla. He's the Senior Vice President for the Anti-Defamation League in New York. As you know, dealing with the issue of anti-Semitic actions throughout the country, anti-Islamic, anti-LGBT has been a big problem during this election year. And so Max is going to tell us a little bit about civil rights and what the ADL is doing on that front. Max?
Yes, thanks, Domingo. Hey, everyone. It's really nice being here with you today. The Anti-Defamation League, ADL, was founded in 1913. And what makes me really proud is that over 100 years ago, the founders of the organization had the vision that in order to fight anti-Semitism, they must commit to fighting all forms of hate. So we think of ourselves as an anti-hate organization. We fight anti-Semitism in the same way that we fight anti-Latino hate, black racism, anti-LGBTQ discrimination, etc. And unfortunately, we're at a moment of time where either we fight with everything that we've got, or we really go backwards decades, if not longer. And with regards to anti-Semitism, we are at a particular moment in time where the community feels really threatened. The Jewish community, 2% of the US population, feels incredibly threatened. People, like college students, are not going to school because of the threat, harassment, intimidation, and even physical violence that has occurred particularly over the past few months. But it builds on a decade of us moving backwards. When I think of this following statistic, it really shocks me and alarms me, and it's about the Jewish community in the United States, but I do believe strongly that it's representative of all of our minority communities and the challenges that we're facing. Over the past 10 years, anti-Semitism in the United States has grown by 800%. The number of incidents that we're tracking is by 800%. So when we got 23 regional offices around the country, an office that 10 years ago was dealing with 1 or 2 cases of anti-Semitism, right now it's dealing with hundreds. We've got an incident of anti-Semitism every day of every day of the year, and things are getting worse. And yet, the conversation that we're having here today on this panel and with all of you is what gives me hope. Because we are all facing the same challenges, and the only way that we meet this moment in time is by working together to fight that hate and discrimination. It's really important for ADL to work with Alphonso and with Tom to be part of coalitions, and the election coming up in a few months is going to determine the future of our civil rights situation. So we at ADL are focusing on 3 things that I think you will find very relatable. One is misinformation online. That's an issue that so far has not come up, but I know that all of you are living through the misinformation and disinformation that is shared through social media, and that is really putting an incredibly challenging moment in our democracy. It's one that it is purposeful and malicious in order to belittle and weaken our leadership and our vote. And unless we challenge that misinformation and disinformation come November, we're all losers, and our country and our rights are going to be devastated. So that is one area where the ADL is really focused in partnership with organizations here and elsewhere. The other issue that we are working on is voter suppression. And my colleagues here have spoken about some of the efforts, the laws, the proposals, the champions that are trying to belittle our right to vote and determine for ourselves with our own voices what the future of our communities will be. And the third, and it's one where ADL really has second to none expertise in the country, is the threat of violence. We have a center on extremism at ADL that really has absolute leadership when it comes to extremist groups. An extremist that is anti-Semitic, it's an extremist that is anti-Latino, and anti-Black, and anti-LGBTQ. Let me give you a few data points of a study that we did with the University of Chicago only a few months ago that proves that point. So for people that are highly anti-Semitic here in the United States, they're more likely to support political violence for causes they believe in, both on the right and on the left. Those people that are highly anti-Semitic Americans are 2 to 3 times more likely to support political violence. And we saw it on January 6th. Actually, ADL is part of a lawsuit as plaintiffs with the District of Columbia in challenging the Oath Keepers and other leaders of the January 6th insurrection. We really need to be incredibly vigilant with regards to extremists in our midst and make certain that these loud and dangerous voices by a few don't threaten the rights that we all enjoy as Americans and that determine our collective futures. So those are three of the areas that ADL is focused on come November, but it's part of a much larger effort that ADL has taken on as a Jewish-rooted organization. But as I started, in over 100 years of history, there is a dual mission of fighting anti-Semitism and all forms of hate, because that's the only way that we get to move forward as one America, as one community.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple of questions to each one of the panelists, and then we'll take questions from the audience. Tom, we've seen Republican attorney generals and other groups trying to chip away at the Voting Rights Act, especially with the makeup of the Supreme Court now with about 6-3 conservative majority. What do you see as the future of the Voting Rights Act, and how can we protect it going into the future?
Well, the most important way to protect it is by ensuring that Congress acts to restore the most powerful provision in the Voting Rights Act, which was actually struck down 11 years ago by a 5-4 Supreme Court majority. That was a provision of the Voting Rights Act that required certain jurisdictions, including all of Texas, including all of Arizona, to pre-clear any voting changes through the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice would analyze those voting changes to make sure that they would not result in going backward on voting rights, make sure that they were not intended to discriminate on the basis of race when it comes to voting rights, and by that pre-clearance would ensure that nothing was implemented until it had been analyzed in that way. But 11 years ago, in a case called Shelby County versus Holder, the Supreme Court eliminated pre-clearance by saying the coverage formula was unconstitutional. So now Texas can implement its redistricting without going through any review by a court or by the Department of Justice as pre-clearance. Arizona can implement any change in remote voting or who's allowed to vote remotely without having to go through a pre-review by the Department of Justice or a court, a federal court, to determine if it is retrogressive or intentionally discriminatory. There has been legislation, includes that reform, a new coverage formula that we believe would be constitutionally sound, and other changes to protect the right of everyone to vote not just in federal elections, but in state and local elections as well. It's called the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It has been introduced every year since that Shelby County decision 11 years ago in 2013, but it has never advanced because the issue has been made a partisan issue that it had not been before. Every previous reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act, beginning with the 1975 reauthorization that I mentioned, included Latino protections for the first time. Every single reauthorization has been passed by bipartisan majorities in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and coincidentally, every reauthorization has been signed by a Republican president. The last time, 2006, under George W. Bush. Every reauthorization signed by a Republican president. But today, this issue has become so partisanized because one party feels threatened by the growing participation of groups like Latino voters that they refuse to support the John Lewis Act. So the most important thing that we can do is ensure that there is a Congress in place that will enact the John Lewis Act and ensure that the great strength of the Voting Rights Act is reasserted, reaffirmed, and we can move forward. Incidentally, the issue I mentioned in the 8th Circuit, the private right of action, will also be covered by the John Lewis Act when it is eventually enacted into law.
Thank you. Max, segueing from what Tom just talked about, the far-right conservative area, Tucker Carlson and others have been pushing this great replacement theory, that there's this Jewish conspiracy to bring black and brown people into the United States and replace the white population. I mean, and they're really, I mean, it was even heard last night to a certain extent in the debate by one of the presidential candidates, who we all know, the big guy with the orange hair. And how is ADL pushing back on that type of anti-Semitic, anti-black and brown messaging that's coming from the far right?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing it from talking heads, we're seeing it from elected officials, members of Congress, leadership. The sort of misinformation, disinformation that we talked about before, the great replacement theory is certainly a part of those talking points. It's fear of our leadership and our rights. And so there's this asinine theory that couples together anti-Semitism with every other form of hate, which is sort of like the discussion we were having before. We've got, as I said, we've got a center on extremism. We've got very a clear expertise with regards to those extremists that are pushing these arguments. Unfortunately, the more that we have become politicized and polarized, the more that this sort of crazy has moved to the center and has become mainstream. And so we are seeing it not described with that sort of certainty that we've seen from far-right extremist groups over the past few decades, but we see it sort of couched in more, or normalized in more day-to-day language in ways that is repeated, supported, and defended by mainstream actors. And that, that is of great concern. The way we push on it is calling it when we see it, forming the sort of partnerships and coalitions that allow us to push back. And ultimately, it's up to all of us to ensure that our voices are loud enough to really overwhelm those extremist voices that are trying to misguide us with this misinformation and disinformation. And we need to come in coalition in order to push back in places where it counts through policy.
Alphonso, we've seen that, especially in the South, states like Georgia and others, there's been sort of I'm going to call it Jim Crow 2 that's been coming out, that to try to disenfranchise voters, making it difficult to vote, whether it's voter registration, where to vote, where the polling locations are at, and also the extreme gerrymandering that we're seeing. How is your organization working in dealing with this new threat from this Joachim, like Thomas said, basically, now there's no preclearance. Now they, if the state of Alabama wants to do some crazy stuff, or Mississippi, they're doing it.
Yeah, so to the point that you're making, let me give you two examples. You have a family that's about to go out to vote, right? You have parents or maybe a nana, a grandmother going out to vote. And you show up and there's a line to vote and the line is moving. And you're like, okay, we have an hour to vote. We'll wait, we'll stand in line. And as you get closer to the door to vote, they say, we're taking a break. We'll be back. We need more time. And you're standing outside for an hour, 2 hours to vote. Or you show up as a family to vote, and as you get closer to the door, they ask you for your identification. Or if you provide the driver's license, they say, we need a utility bill as well. You don't have a utility bill, you can't vote. That's what he's talking about. And that is happening in many parts of the country. So what we're doing is, given what's happening with the Voting Rights Act, we have partnered with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, which is an organization that Tom works with and many of us work with. They have a program called Election Protection. And what we're doing is identifying people who are willing to come and be volunteers so that you can watch at the voting booth. When this happens, there's a phone call to call. Then there are lawyers that pick up that phone, and then we're able to contact the voting booth and say, why are you closed? Why are you asking them for a utility bill? And that's incredibly important. So any of you that may be interested in election protection work, please volunteer. It could be volunteering for an hour, volunteering for a day, because we don't have the protections we had with the Voting Rights Act. Until it is reauthorized, we need to make sure we provide the resources to protect our right to vote. So election protection for us is the key.
And I would just add that there is a Spanish language election protection effort that goes along with the Lawyers Committee run by NALEO, the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. They also look for volunteers, particularly bilingual volunteers, because they're taking calls. The Lawyers Committee is taking them in English. There is a Spanish language hotline for Spanish-speaking voters.
Yes.
Gaby, we've seen, like at the debate last night, where immigrants are being demonized, basically made as sort of the other in this election, and immigration has become the #1 driving issue for the Republican Party. And the scapegoating and fear-mongering of immigrants is probably at a level we haven't seen in a while. And I've been around a long time. How do you think we push back against that type of right-wing fear-mongering that we're seeing, especially as a former undocumented person yourself, and that we're dealing with those issues across the board?
This is one where it's hard because it shouldn't be up to us, the immigrant community, to go and educate people around the fact that I think it's like 94% of the population of the United States can trace their history, like they're all immigrants, right? They came from somewhere else. Either they were forced to come to this country or they migrated to this country. But we, the immigrants, need to be telling our story. And we need to, the word that you use, the why, right? And I think about I think it's like, I don't have kids, but I hear that when they're 3 or 4, the kids start asking why, right? And I really think that that's what we need to do. When you hear these ridiculous, outrageous, sometimes disgusting things that come out of the mouth of Trump or anybody else, we need to say, why? Why do you say that? Where's that data? Can you tell me why? And really question this, and then tell our stories. Our stories have power. And I have been able to confront KKK members in their hoods. I have been able to confront people who really have believed what they watch on Fox News. They just watch this over and over and over and consumed all this hatred towards immigrants, but they've never met an immigrant. And what usually happens is they tell me, oh, you're the good immigrants, we should let you in. I have a friend who's an attorney, and let me help you because we need you, you're the good immigrant. And then I say, okay, what about my sisters and my brother? And they're like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm like, we're the same family, right? And then once I start questioning them and saying, I'm no different than the immigrants who live in your community, than the immigrants in this country, it really starts to plant that seed of doubt in people's mind of like, I'm being lied to. I'm being manipulated to react to fear. And so it is when we are able to control that narrative with our own lived stories that we're able to push back. And so it's hard. And I've heard people say, why do I have to be educating folks? But unfortunately, that's what we have to do. And use the tool of questions. It's not about me coming in, and I have the heart of a teacher. I wanted to be an educator. I went to school to be an educator. And one of the things that Carlos Eduardo Espina talked about earlier today was you got to talk to the people in their language. So if you're progressive and you come and use all your progressive words to somebody that's conservative, they're not going to understand what you're saying. I wouldn't go into a classroom of first graders and talk to them as if they're in college, right? You talk to people in their own terms. So I guess what I would say is that we have to not push away. We cannot be siloing ourselves, and we really have to confront these and tell more stories.
All right, so that's the end of our official program. We're willing to take some questions here before we leave. If there's some questions, go ahead and raise your hand, and we have a mic for you. Over here on the far left, I see a couple of hands, and just tell us what the question is and which panelist you want to address it to.
My question is for Gaby. Hello, my name is Catherine Arellano. I'm from Iowa, and I'm the Latino Outreach Coordinator in my community. So I work with middle school, high school, and college students. And some of the students I work with are undocumented. And just earlier this year, Iowa passed a law that undocumented students have to pay out-of-state tuition. So I was just wondering if there are any scholarships, advice, or just hopeful words I can bring back to these students.
Yes. The Dream.us, have you heard of it? So the Dream.us is a national scholarship program. If you feel comfortable and you are a Dream.us scholar from another state that has had, please raise your hand. Okay, so we have some of those. So those students have applied to a scholarship called the Opportunity Scholarship. They received a full ride, room aboard, and then they get to choose a university that we partner with, and they leave their state. They're lost, and they get to actually go to college. And so what I would say to those individuals is that first acknowledge that it's unfair. That's not right, what is happening to them, what that state is doing. But there is ways, and there are people that care about them, like you. There are people that believed in them, like all the donors of the Dream.us. We've been able to raise over $400 million in the last 10 years to send over 10,000 students to college. And so despite those just misinformed, I don't even have a term for them, but people that just don't know what they're doing, right, and have passed these terrible laws, there are thousands and millions of other people out there that really care for them, even though they don't even know them. Like, we want for them to succeed.
Okay. I saw another hand over here.
Yeah.
Over here on the left, and then over here on the right. Gentleman here in the third row.
Mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Juan Diego González. And my question is, to all of you, it's kind of up in the air. You touched a bit on affirmative action. And what I'd like to ask you is, we focus a lot on kind of getting into college. Latino students being able to get into these schools, being able to go where they need to go. But what I feel like we didn't touch on was really finishing. We have thousands of Latinos in colleges, but what percentage of them are really graduating? What percentage of them are in there for more than 4 years, more than 2 years, 3 years, and don't come out with a degree? What would you say, or what words would you give to me and to the other young Latinos here about kind of going through and committing to that?
So you've identified the critical issue for our community. We have more and more Latino students who want to go to college, and they're being admitted and they're enrolling in college, but they're unable to complete. And that's the critical issue for our community, is not just to focus on access, but success and getting the degree and then going on beyond the degree. And what I would say to you is similar to what Gaby said to the last questioner. First of all, know that you're not alone, that the community wants to support you. The community is looking for ways to support you in getting all the way through to the degree. So reach out to those you know, and when you get to know someone, reach out. There are folks who want to make sure that we are able to solve this problem. I will say that one of the issues we will have to grapple with is that affirmative action decision from a year ago, which was only about admissions, is unfortunately being used by some states, like Texas, to eliminate some of the important supports that exist in colleges and universities to help our community complete, whether that's a support center or an ethnic studies center or something like that that's being threatened. Please bring that to our attention, because while we can't mandate that they have those systems, we can look carefully at how they're eliminating them to determine if they can be legally challenged. But we all need to express constant support, not just for the existence of these supports, but that they be adequately funded by the universities, by state governments, to ensure that everyone who enters is able to complete.
So another hand over here, the lady in the back here with the hand up.
Hello. My question is to Max Sevilla. Your organization, the ADL, promotes itself as one of the American leaders of defenders of civil rights, and you sit here talking about the importance of calling out hate. Yet the ADL has made accusations stating that college students such as myself, other people of color, other Latinos and Jews that support pro-Palestine and they are anti-genocide, that they are terrorists. That your CEO is calling out people saying that we need to investigate Jewish Voice for Peace, which is a student-led organization. So my question is, does the ADL's prioritization of pro-Israel advocacy over broader civil rights advancements, including accusations against pro-Palestinian students and the conflation of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, raise concerns about its commitment to defending diverse opinions and free speech?
Thanks for the question. It's a good one. It's an important one. I would say that freedom of speech is critical. It's a civil right that we all believe in, that ADL has worked on for 113 years history. There are situations happening in college campuses nowadays and beyond college campuses that cross lines from freedom of speech into conduct that threatens, harasses, intimidates other students and other colleagues. We are seeing that on campuses and elsewhere. We are opposed to that violence, to those threats. We are working towards ensuring that code of conduct in colleges and universities that exists for everyone to remain safe, that those are respected, so that every single student, every single professor, everyone throughout the United States has a right to access to their education and has a freedom of speech and freedom of all of their rights the same way as everyone else. SJP and some other organizations oftentimes over the past many months have crossed lines into terrorizing the communities that they are part of, and that's what we've spoken up against. We have also spoken up with regards to the rights and the situations and the tragedies that are occurring against all people, both in the United States and elsewhere. And that is work that ADL is committed to and remains committed to.
Okay, over here in the middle. And we'll take two more and then we gotta wrap it up. Okay, over here and then we'll go over there.
Is this on? Okay, hi. Hello, everyone. Hello, thank you for, I guess, being a part of this panel and allowing a lot of the LULAC Academy, a lot of the young activists, the change makers, disruptors to be here today. So my name is Galilea Cejas. I'm from Washington, D.C. As many people know, it's a very political realm, and just being around in the area of Northern Virginia, it can get a lot, at least in being a part of student campaigns, being part of SJP movements, as you mentioned before. So my question to everybody here, what advice would you give to new voters kind of questioning the stability of our two-party system in the extent of like, oh, what about a more radicalized party or more radicalized thinking? Because as we've seen, despite civil rights movements, despite student movements, yes, being radical, it's very left, too much, too disrupting, not really providing more equitable practices for the rest of the community. Yes, I get that, but that's pretty much the history of what we've seen. So how would you speak on addressing about those students who are like, no, I'm gonna actually not vote this year, not vote in November, because I'm protesting against the two lesser evils, or the two candidates that we're seeing today?
Gaby, you want to kick it off first?
In 2016, one of my biggest mistakes was not being involved because I just didn't want for Hillary Clinton, who is very smart. She's done, good stuff in her life. It's a good politician, but I was like, why do we need to continue to have the same people and the same families running the country, right? Why can't we find other folks? And I thought the same. the lesser of two evils is still evil, so why would I push myself out there? And the closer we were getting to the election, and the closer I was seeing what Donald Trump was saying about me, my community, I started realizing, oh no, like there's a lot at stake in here. And it's not just some things, right? It's look who got into the Supreme Court. Look at all the other courts, right? Look at the decimation of so many of our civil rights that happened in 4 years. And for me at the time as a DACA recipient, when Donald Trump won, I wasn't able to sleep for months because as a DACA recipient, I had a job and that job afforded me health care. And at the time, people didn't know this, but I was actually going through cancer treatment. And I was really afraid of what was gonna happen if I lost my health insurance. And so, yes, we can make these things so easy, and we can put these things, the lesser of two evils is still evil. But reality is that today we live in the United States of America. And as much as I believe, and I believe I'm a true independent, and I would love to see a third party, and not this two-party system, this binariness, this is what we have right now. And if you do not vote, you don't care, in my opinion, right? I was in that sense, and so you need to vote. And you need to make sure that you get your voices heard. The stakes are too high to say, I'm not gonna vote.
And I'm going to answer that question real quick. And I don't know if the camera guy can zoom in on this. I don't want to have to do this again. In 2017, Trump started taking the children away from the parents. And LULAC went to McAllen, Texas to protest. And I saw this little boy in a jail prison bus. And this is the first one of a little boy. He was behind bars. That's a bar in a prison bus. And we got in front of that bus and we made the bus turn around. But that is the consequences of not voting. Hillary didn't win, Trump won, and Trump put little babies in cages in jails. That was what happened when they were taking kids away from the parents. And when he says, and any politician makes a promise to deport 14 million people, take him at their word. And what's the impact that's gonna be in our community? What's the impact that's gonna have on our country? And when they refuse to provide education to people and they make it just a privilege for the few, take them at their word. There are elements in this country that don't believe that people that look like me and you, whose last names are like me and you, deserve the same rights as them. And if you don't vote, and if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu, and then you're gonna be in the dustbin. So you gotta make a difference.
Can I just say something on this point?
Go ahead.
I went through an experience that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. We lived in a democracy in Liberia. And overnight, we moved into a dictatorship. My uncle was assassinated. My father was put in prison. We lived under house arrest for 3 years. And for people here in this country, it seems implausible that we will live in a space where we no longer are able to be free. But to her point, I think it's important to think about what is at risk, because we may not, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, but depending on what happens, the right to vote may change as we know it, so that the next 4 years, you may not have the right to vote in the way that you do today. So I think as we talk about theory and as we talk about process, those are incredibly important. And I encourage everyone to think about expanding the political spectrum. More than two parties, I would endorse as well. But we have something happening in a few months. And the choices that we make will dictate whether we have a future. And I think that's also really important for us to keep in mind. No judgment on the choices that we ultimately make, but I want to make sure those choices are informed, because when we woke up and we couldn't leave the house, and my father's in jail for 18 months, I'm a kid. I don't really understand what democracy is at that point, but I understood very quickly what freedom was. And so just think about that as we go through the next few months and the potential collateral implications for voting or not voting.
All right. I wish I could take more questions. Unfortunately, it's 5 o'clock and our time is up. And I'm sure some of these speakers will be here to take any individual questions from you or take photographs. Muchísimas gracias. Remember, you got to fight for your right to party and your right to vote. And really, that right has been shed by a lot of people over the years to have us a right to vote and to make sure we make a difference. So go out there and make a difference yourselves. Muchísimas gracias. And thank you to all.